I've got the top 10 third basemen in fantasy baseball coming up next on Beat the Odds. Don't go anywhere. Hello, sports fans, and welcome back to another episode of Beat the Odds. I'm going to count down the top 10 third basemen that you should target in your upcoming fantasy baseball drafts. If you like this content, please smash that like button. And a special thanks goes to all of our subscribers who have been watching these videos, as you now account for 26% of all viewers. To the other 74% of viewers that haven't yet subscribed, I encourage you to do so, as it helps me create these videos for you. Also, leave a comment on a player that you think deserves to be on this list. This episode is brought to you by Thrive Fantasy Sports. Use the promo code BEATTHEODDS to double your first deposit up to $250. And first-time users get a free square. Like tonight, if you bet on Steph Curry to score 1 point and he does, then you win. Now let's start the list off at third here with Nolan Arenado. Last season he had 71 runs scored, 26 homers, 93 runs batted in, 3 stolen bases, and a .266 average. It's a little odd to see Arenado drop this far down a third base list, but he's coming off a down year, to his standards at least. At 32 years of age, it's too early to say that Arenado is in the twilight of his career, but he has had difficulty making hard contact all last season. He's still a difficult player to strike out, and he may rely on his contact skills the further into his career that he progresses. Let's move to number 9. We have Josh Young. Last season he had 75 runs scored, 23 homers, 70 runs batted in, a stolen base, and a .266 average. We might be witnessing a star in the making in Young. He's an absolute powerhouse with an elite defensive prowess. He was in the 86th percentile for exit velocity and a 98th percentile for sweet spot percentage. He needs to cut down on his swing and miss game a little bit, but with his full field approach and excellent raw power, that should line him up here for some success. As we saw last season, the Texas lineup is very potent, and that should give Young a chance at some nice counting stats this year. Let's go to number 8. We have Alex Bregman. Last season, he had 103 runs scored, 25 homers, 98 runs batted in, 3 stolen bases, and a .262 average. Starting his 9th season, it's hard to believe that Bregman is still under 30 years old. He's a very patient hitter, one that's comfortable taking a walk to pass the baton on to the next batter. He has enrolled in the Marcus Semien School of Hitting, which synergizes nicely with the Crawford boxes in left field at Minute Maid Park. His line from last season is repeatable, which makes him a pretty safe pick at third base. Moving on to number 7, we have Royce Lewis. Last season he had 36 runs scored, 15 homers, 52 runs batted in, 6 stolen bases, and a .309 average. His upside makes it very difficult to rank him on this list. He has a natural ability to be in the discussion for the top 3 offensive third basemen this year, but he lacks the at-bats, and his ACL tears have suppressed his value. If we get 500 at-bats from Lewis this season, then we can expect him to put up some middle-of-the-order type numbers. That is a big if, however, and it's also the inherent risk that you're going to take when you draft him. Let's go to number 6. We have Manny Machado. Last season he had 75 runs scored, 30 homers, 91 runs batted in, 3 stolen bases, and a .258 average. Manny is now entering his 13th season in the show. He had a down year, as did most of the Padre lineup last season, but he's a good bet to bounce back. He's a polished hitter who has made a living on making hard contact on a regular basis. I wouldn't be surprised to see an OPS north of 800 with a shot at 35 homers hitting in the middle of a still potent San Diego lineup. Let's go to number 5. We have Eloy D Cruz. Last season he had 67 runs scored, 13 homers, 44 runs batted in, 35 stolen bases, and a .235 average. Speculation abounds with De La Cruz. His 30.5 feet per second sprint speed places him amongst the fastest in the league. He is a threat to lead the league in stolen bases. He could be a 30 home run hitter this year as well. He's also a threat to lead the league in strikeouts. He could be the most fun player to roster this season or the most frustrating. Now, how high are you willing to reach? Moving over to number 4, we have Gunnar Henderson. Last season he had 100 runs scored, 28 homers, 82 runs batted in, 10 stolen bases, and a .255 average. Gunnar at age 22 has an advanced hitting profile. He has had success making hard contact at the expense of swinging through some pitches. His walk rate is solid, which means I can see that he's an adjustment or two away from having a very polished batting eye. This Baltimore team is going to be fun to watch for a long time, and Gunnar will likely be in the thick of it all. Going to number 3, we have Rafael Devers. Last season, he had 90 runs scored, 33 homers, 100 runs batted in, 5 stolen bases, and a .271 average. We sometimes forget how young some of the most recognizable faces in the league are. This is Devers' age 27 season, which is to say that we can be comfortable projecting his peak. He's a pretty good bet for 800 to 900 OPS. He should get you 30 homers, and depending on how the lineup shakes up, he might make a run for 110 runs batted in. This could be a very fun season to own Devers. To number 2 we go. We have Austin Riley. Last season he had 117 runs scored, 37 homers, 97 runs batted in, 3 stolen bases, and a .281 average. It's very wise to get a piece of a powerhouse lineup, especially if they're projected to hit cleanup. The downside of owning Riley, if it's really a downside, is that he's likely going to have fewer runners on than most cleanup hitters because the batters ahead of him can all mash. My question for Riley is if he's ever going to be able to use that speed that he has. At 28.1 feet per second, he should be able to nab a dozen bags with ease. And finally, at number 1, we have Jose Ramirez. Last season, he had 87 runs scored, 24 homers, 80 runs batted in, 28 stolen bases, and a .282 average. Let's run it back with J-Ram in the driver's seat as the league's best third baseman. He does everything for you. He walks, he can move base runners, he can turn on a pitch, and he can steal a bag. He's the safest bet for a 2020 season from the position. Contrary to Austin Riley, Ramirez sees more runners on base with all the contact hitters ahead of him in the lineup, which puts him in a great position to cash in on some runs batted in. And that's going to do it here for this episode. I hope you guys enjoyed it. If you did, please leave a like on the video and of course subscribe to the channel for more content like this. I am going to sign off for now, but I will catch you guys on our next episode.